So today what we're going to do is get to know the effects loop capabilities of the quad cortex. And this is something I've actually not used very often. I tend to keep everything self-contained within the quad cortex, but I wanted to play around with this, and there's two tests that I want to run today. The first is with this overdrive pedal. We're going to start off with this in front of the quad cortex. So you can see I have the guitar, which is this gold cable running into the input, and then the output from this is going into the input of the quad cortex. So what we're going to do is we're going to set that as a baseline, and then we're going to move this pedal into the effects loop and see what kind of differences we get and how we can adjust the volumes right. The second test I want to run is going to be with this Keeley Halo. This is the Andy Timmons dual delay. And as you can see, it's a stereo effect. So we're going to run this as a stereo in the effects loop, and we're going to try it out in different positions in the preset. As you can see, the preset's pretty straightforward. All I've got is a Lone Star amp into an IR. There's no delay, there's no reverb. The preset on its own right now sounds like this. And I've got the overdrive set to pretty much unity, meaning it's about the same volume on or off. Here's what it sounds like on. So a nice smooth overdrive, it works really well. So with that as our baseline, let's go ahead and move this pedal into the effects loop and see what we get. So you'll see now I've got the pedal in the effects loop. The guitar input's going into the quad cortex. Effects loop 1 is coming out to the input of the pedal. The output's going back to effects loop 1 return. So let's head over to Cortex Control and play around with our effects loops. All right, so here we are. Let's go ahead and we're going to add in an effects loop for the amp. So right here, we're going to go down and put in an FX loop. And let's talk about what we have here. So there's three sections of this. One is a full FX loop, meaning in one block you're doing the send and return, or you can have individual blocks for the send and the return. So theoretically, you could send out to the effects loop, have other blocks, and then have the returns come in after those other effects. So in effect, it kind of enables you to do a little bit of parallel processing if you want. But today, we're just going to focus in on the full in and out loops. So these FX loop 1 and 2 are 2. So basically what this is you've got two effects loops, 1 and 2, and 1 and 2 is if you're doing a stereo effects loop. So when we get to working with the Halo pedal, we'll use the effects loop 1, 2, meaning a stereo effects loop. But for today, we're just going to use 1. And you can see here, the controls I have are pretty straightforward. You have a send level, a return level, a mix, so you can mix in the amount of effect you want to have. So how you want to set the mix is kind of interesting. In this case, if we're using an overdrive pedal, I probably want to mix it 100%, but I could mix it less than 100% if I wanted to mix the overdrive pedal sound with the clean sound on the preset, and that might give us something. We'll play around with that. And then you have the trails. So trails is just like on any other effect. It means when you turn the block off, does it cut off the input? So for example, if we're using the Halo as our example again, having the trails on, it means when I turn the effects loop off, the return from that pedal that it's still generating would still be coming through and you'd still be hearing it. If I had this off, as soon as I turn the effects loop off, it would just cut off the effect. So typically I always leave the trails on because I think you can get some really abrupt switches when you're moving around scenes and turning things on and off if you're cutting off the trails. So again, we're in the effects loop now, so the effects loop off, it should be no different than when we had the pedal off. So let's turn it on, and the overdrive pedal is turned on, and we're going to leave it in on position. And so when I turn this on, I should engage the overdrive. So one thing you'll notice is the volume, I think, is pretty high. And I think the level you're getting from the quad cortex into this pedal is greater than if you were just running your guitar signal into it. So one thing I found is I like to drop the send level by a little bit. And what I typically do I will adjust the send level to get unity. And the reason I'm adjusting the send level is because I think the output level from the quad cortex in the effects loop at line level is a little hotter than you would get from the guitar. So I like dropping that level to mimic more of a guitar level signal. The other thing I'll say is this balancing I'm doing now only works if you've got the pedals set and intending to have the pedals set at a kind of a unity setting, meaning when it's on, you're not hoping to push the volume. Sometimes with drive pedals, you do want to push the volume because you want to push the front of the amp more. I don't know that I would want to do that in the effects loop. If my goal was to have a drive pedal in front of the quad cortex and have it boost the signal, I think I'd rather do that in front of the quad cortex than I would in the effects loop. Just my opinion. But you can see here, I think it's kind of a good leveling here. And like I said before, we can mix this down. If I wanted to cut this to 50%, you can hear it's not as overdriven. Interesting though, the volume when I'm dropping the mix. Seems like when I drop the mix, the overall volume is going up. So if I wanted this to be, say, a 50% mix, what I might do is drop the return level a little bit. So I think that works pretty well. I think it's just a matter of balancing those send and return levels. So again, my first starting point is if the pedal's kind of running in unity, I'm going to adjust the send level of the effects loop to make sure when I turn on the effects loop, I'm also getting unity, meaning the volumes are the same. If I'm dropping the mix, what I'm finding is I need to adjust the volume again, and for that, I'm adjusting the return level. So I think that's good for the Overdrive pedal. Let's hook in the halo and play around with that. So as you can see, now I've got the halo hooked in. Stereo signal, there's a lot of cables here. I've got send 1 and send 2 all running into the halo and then back. So let's go ahead and hear how this sounds. So to start out, let's put our effects loop after the amp and after the cabinets. So we'll put it right here. We're doing an effects loop. And because this is a stereo effect, we're going to use this one, FX loop 1, 2. And you can see our controls are the same, send level, return level, mix, and trails. So let's go ahead and check the levels. You can hear I'm getting a little bit of distortion there. I think that's because the level going into the halo is too high. So I'm going to drop this the same amount I did for the overdrive pedal. Maybe a little bit more. I think that works pretty well. So that's normally where I would put this kind of ambient effects at the end. But let's try moving it around. Let's put it in front of the amp. We can even put it between the amp and the IR. That is such a nice effect. I think I like it best here. I think I like it between the amp and the IR. I feel like if you have it before the amp is having too much coloring on the effect. And if you're putting it after the IR, I don't know, the level's higher and the pedal doesn't seem to react as well to it. So I'm really liking it here in between the two. I need to play with that halo pedal more. It's a beautiful effect, especially for this clean tone. Anyway, I hope you found this helpful, and as always, thanks for watching.